Hello, welcome back. My name is Kelly Folsom again, and first of all I just want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my channel, and I'm so happy that many of you are enjoying the videos. Today I'm going to paint some glass for you, a piece of a cup that's sort of a blue glass. I'm really not sure what type of glass it is, but I think it's kind of popular. People seem to recognize the look of it. And I'm not going to go through, all of the paints that I use and all of that. If you have any questions on my materials, I have a video on the materials that covers all of the materials. It gives you, it even gives you some website information for some of the specific brands. So I'm really excited that these have been helpful to you, and we're going to do another one today. So I do get a lot of questions about painting glass, and of course there's all different types of glass, different colors, different transparent, different levels of transparencies. But there are some general principles I've learned behind painting glass that can kind of get you started, no matter what type of glass you're painting. So we'll just begin. It's just a little short kind of tumbler glass, so I'm just blocking in the size of it here. Anyways, this is one of my favorite little glasses to paint. It just has so many little layers and nice color. It's a nice size, so it's just something you can kind of get lost in the study of, all the little changes, color changes and whatnot. And one thing to keep in mind too, I think, with these tutorials is that everything is always dependent upon the context that it's in. So this is just to basically just to kind of give you an idea of how you would approach painting glass if you just don't even know where to begin, or just trying to maybe figure out where you're going wrong when approaching glass. So how I would paint this just as a singular study versus a different painting is, always subject to change. It always really depends on the situation as far as, how much detail I put in. Oops, my phone's ringing. Okay. So sorry about that. My phone went off. Okay, so as I was saying, how I would paint this may differ between, depending on what kind of composition it is in. So painting, of course, is more than just, learning to paint things. So unfortunately, this is a good place to start, where you're just trying to understand what makes one object different, or what's the characteristics that are different in one object than in another. However, while this is a good place to get started, it's really not what will actually make a really good painting. So don't be surprised if you say, well, I've learned how to paint grapes, or I've copied exactly how so-and-so paints grapes, or paints glass, or paints metal, but yet and then you go to kind of piece it all together in a painting, and it doesn't work. So as far as, you know, really getting a nice painting together is a little bit different than just painting one object in singularity. So none of this is really methods as far as, you know, step one, step two, you know, you always do this or you always repeat that solution. But basically I'm just hoping to give you a place to start. And even in this case, obviously I'm not just painting the glass, there's an environment to consider. So right now I'm essentially painting the tabletop on which this object is resting, and also some background. So you always want to consider the entire space because all of these colors are going to influence each other. You're going to be relating background value to values in the glass as well as color, you know. So in this case, I know I have some stronger blues in my glass, and so I'm just kind of keeping this perhaps a little quieter if I want the glass to stand out more. I don't really have anything else in the painting to come forward, so to speak, from the background. So I know if I want the glass to get more attention, I'm really going to have to, you know, fill it with some type of stronger visual interest, whether that is, you know, thicker paint or more specific brushwork, or, like I said before, cleaner, crisper edges, or, you know, more color saturation. So just putting in the front edge of the tabletop shelf edge here that the glass is sitting on. And this color, this is just pretty much burnt umber at this point, and this one has some Naples yellow and white and burnt umber together. All of my top planes are getting a lot of light. My light coming from the top left in the window. This background color is just like a nice kind of soft neutral gray. It's made with ivory black and ultramarine blue, and again some Naples yellow, or lead tin yellow, I'm sorry. And as you see, I just kind of walked some of it inside the glass as well. So that's the first thing to consider, is that glass being, you know, a transparent object versus, say, an orange or an apple, or, you know, a ceramic pot. You know, light's not passing through it, it's not see-through. So that's the first thing that you want to try and capture when you're painting glass, is a sense of whatever's behind or around is going to show up to some degree, in this case behind. Generally speaking, kind of like on grapes, your starting edge on a piece of glass is your darker edge. Usually there's kind of a darker edge here. And then this is a really thick glass. And at the bottom here, there's like a really thick layers of glass, and it goes pretty dark down here. So I'll start that off pretty much just as a solid shape. I'm just going to connect those shapes for now. There's different colors and value changes in there, but I'm just going to start it off simple like that, and then work the changes into it as I see needed, you know, as they're needed. I can kind of put in some more of this background color. Just looking at the glass, you know, it kind of, you know, like I said, starts off darker and then kind of opens up and gets a little sort of what I call airy light moving through that part of the glass. And there is a local color to this glass. It's more of a blue tinted. glass, so eventually I'll be getting some hints of local color as well. First thing I want to do, one of the dominant characteristics of this particular cup, and I'll also take a photo of the cup that I'm painting too, but you should be able to understand it just from looking at the painting, what it is. Hopefully that's the goal anyway. But there's this really beautiful, rich, kind of deep blue all on the edge here. So this is ultramarine blue, a little bit of alizarin added in, and there is some white in it because those colors are so transparent. I usually do put a little bit of white in it, and especially a little bit more where the highlight's going to be. Overall, it's pretty much as dark of a value as down here. It just has more saturation of color in it, so I'm using more of a pure or a higher pigmented color like ultramarine blue and alizarin versus down here kind of just had some blue and burnt umber. So that will get me started there. Okay, I don't know. The last thing that I said, where I left off, I believe I was talking about the difference between the local color of the glass. The actual kind of clear glass is more of a kind of like a pool blue, like a blue-green color, which is of course a little bit different than the ultramarine blue. So I'm going to have a little bit of yellow and a little bit of the phthalo or Prussian blue, your kind of cooler, greener blue. Now as I get closer to the edge here, kind of like on a grape, there's sort of this band of light here, like passing through the glass. This is kind of where it gets its lightest within the glass itself. But I always want to be comparing, I'm always looking to compare one value to another. So if I'm just looking at that area, sometimes the mistake that happens, or what I've learned, is that I'm seeing it out of context and I will make it too light in value because I'm just looking at the area around it. But if I go up and I look at the highlight, then I notice that the highlight is definitely much, much lighter in value. So that's, you know, sort of how I keep track of my values and, you know, more accurate, you know, making more accurate decisions as I go, so I don't run into a whole lot of things that I have to change. I think basically the whole time you're making a series of refinements and modifications, you know, just trying to get things to be finer, going from the broad idea to, you know, more and more particular. So that's, you know, also a good reason why when you start a painting, I think even if you're doing anything, if you can kind of get a feel before you begin, you know, kind of locate your extremes. You know, where's my darkest dark? Where's my lightest light? What's my brightest color? What's, you know, meaning, you know, kind of more saturated color? And what's my darkest, or I'm sorry, not my darkest, but the dullest color? If you can try to think about those things ahead of time. It will, help you, and eventually you kind of get in the habit of just doing it as you go, or kind of, not having to think about it, really making yourself think about it. But when you're first learning, you almost have to maybe even have a little list for yourself of questions, or things that you need to remind yourself of. When I'm landscape painting, I might even say things out loud, just because, I may get a little more lost in a landscape painting, especially if the scene is really complicated. So I'm going to push the color here just a little bit more. I'm not really seeing it that strong, but I think it'll be nice. It'll be really pretty. And I always think it's a good idea to do things like that because you can always pull back on it. It's always easier to make it less colorful than if you kind of make it too dull to begin with. Okay, sorry. I've got a little stem through here. Anytime you have something kind of showing through the glass, of course, that always leads to the believability of it being transparent, which is, it's just a lot of fun, Just kind of fun to paint see-through things. I don't know why. It's like a little magic trick. And I have these little eucalyptus, kind of again, sort of that blue-green versus the warmer green that's in the lip of the glass. Is just a really beautiful color. So that was just the phthalo for the shadow on those. The phthalo blue or the Prussian. Oops, that's a little too much the same color as what I have down in here. These have a little bit more yellow in them, a little bit more light. But just the burnt umber and the phthalo for the shadow color on those, which is really nice. And a little more alizarin into the back edge of this blue glass. My background is pretty thin right now, and started it off that way kind of on purpose, just getting a basic value and color in. Not 100% certain yet if I would leave it that color. Let me get another little kind of highlight on the back rim here. Another little, this is kind of warmer, little piece of light down here. Some of the tabletop color is actually showing through, especially on the back side and on this side. So I'm gonna try to get some of the warmth. So, if you have like an orange or anything else around it, lemon, whatever color around it, you want to look for that color within the glass itself. And I put strokes over strokes, but I'm not really blending. I am putting down good paint. I'm kind of layering, one brush stroke over another. Okay. Okay, so I've got to really move along here, since these can usually, with my capabilities, my computer and camera and everything, I can usually only handle doing about a 30-minute demo. Okay. So just sometimes as you're painting, you will kind of lose a good edge. And where the form starts and where the form ends, you do want a pretty nice edge there. And then we try to create some other inner edges, you know, thicker areas of impasto. The highlight, there's like a little, not quite as light as the highlight, but you know, sort of that light goes across the surface of the glass. Now, any of your surface lights will have more white in them, whereas your reflected lights, you know, usually are a little bit warmer. Bring back that highlight. You know, that's probably a little too light. It's actually quite closer in value, I think. Try to clean up this edge of the lip. There's also a very strong demarcation, like where the glass part is and where the neck, not the neck, the lip is. So it's pretty easy to change something if you need to. It's not, you know, but you just have to get comfortable, like moving the paint around. And I'd say you're going to have a bit better, a bit more luck learning how to paint if you can just kind of let the paint go down where it's going to go. And instead of trying to say, take it off or scrape it off, or I've even seen people use these little kind of rubber spatula things, and they'll put something down and they'll immediately, maybe they don't like it, so they start scraping it off, and I don't know, that gives me some anxiety. So try to look, you know, go ahead and make some mistakes and try to learn from, I would say rather deal with those mistakes, you know, decide, you know, okay, I didn't quite get that right where I wanted, or, you know, can I use another piece of paint to carve it down or make it finer? Learn how to soften an edge like that with, you know, just a gentler pressure. Or a lot of times in the beginning you're just using, you just haven't learned to manipulate the brush just yet. You might be really kind of a rough with the brush, or have, you know, a lot of pressure with the brush. Okay, so although there's a little bit of light, of course, moving through the glass, we still kind of end. So I'm going to go back in and kind of make this a little stronger. And then we still end on a note of, you know, a little bit of the local color of the glass and a little bit darker. It's not quite, it's very fine in comparison to this starting edge, but it's still there. So, and it's nice because it does kind of separate the form out a little bit more from the background. And I'm going to try to just get a little bit stronger background color behind the glass just real quickly. I'm not quite sure how much time I have left. But just something a little more solid back here. This is just, I believe, black and white and some yellow ochre. Okay. you know, the rest of this would just be sort of fine-tuning, modifying it. One last thing to do that would be really good is to get some of the, there's like a stem highlight within the glass. And a few more of those leaves showing through the glass. Now, usually the values that show up in the glass are not quite as, you know, much contrast, say, as you would see them outside of the glass. So the darks, kind of like painting water too, it's very similar. The darks are going to raise a little bit in value, and the lights, you know, may be a little bit duller and darker. You know, things maybe just feel like you're looking through, you know, one layer of glass, and for the background color, you're looking through, say, 2 layers of glass. So you have to consider that. Generally, it's not the exact same color that's in the background, you know, so it's like 2 layers of glass plus background color would be one way to think of it. I just want to see if I can, it's nice. You know, just try to, you always are trying to also be brave, you know, and kind of respond to the paint. But there's sort of this teal, blue-green on the underside of this, and if I did, especially whenever you have a time limit, you know, sometimes you're going, what is the one thing I could do that I'm missing that would really communicate the quality of this object or this scene? So that's always a good mode of thought to be in, so that you're trying to always work forward. Okay. And I think that's going to have to be it. We only have maybe 30 seconds left. I really hope this was helpful to you. And I hope you continue to watch my videos, and hopefully they'll help you in your painting.